Hi there, my name is Owen Cooper, and in this video I'm going to be taking you through how I made gunshot sounds just using my voice, my keys, and some paper. And this was how I made gunshot sounds for my Wwise demo reel project. Now for this example, I've recreated the process that I used to make the rifle sounds. So here's the composite sound that I'm going to end up with here. So if you'd like to keep watching, I'm going to walk through how I did that. So here I've got the source audio, and it starts with this vocal pop here. So I just walked up to the microphone and made a p type sound. So here's that. And that will be the punch. Here are my keys. This was just me hitting the keys together or dropping them from one hand to the other. I'm not sure exactly, but I just used my keychain. That will be the weapon mechanics. And now these are paper samples, and one is a flick and the other one is me rubbing two pieces of paper together. I'm going to combine these layers to both create the reverb and the body. So here's the flick. And here is the rubbing. Okay, so going back here, if we can take a look at this vocal pop sound here for the punch, I shortened it down to about 1.5 oscillations, and then just did a fade out here so there's no pop at the end. And I've got it going through a low pass filter, compressor that hits at about minus 10 dB gain reduction, pretty quick attack, and a high ratio at about 9:1. Sausage fattener, which is going to be really important later for how I did this, but I've mostly used it as a distortion plugin, but it both maximizes and distorts, and this gain knob here is going to be changing on that particular plugin. It's like a limiter, so this controls the output gain. This is controlling both maximization and distortion. And I didn't use the color knob at all for any of these. And then last I put one more limiter on here, Loud Max by Thomas Munt, to just really control the final output on there. So the original source audio with the region shortened like this, sounds like this. And with the effects chain enabled, it's gonna be louder, fatter, and have a little bit of distortion in there. And of course the low pass filter. And that's all that we're gonna need for the punch. It just needs to be that low frequency thump, that kick to the chest. So the mech is even a simpler layer for what I did with the keychain. Just put a fade out here again so that there's no noticeable pop when the sample ends. But for the FX chain, I have just done a simple pitch down of 2 octaves and a high pass EQ with a slight bump in the mid range here from about 1 to 3K with a pretty wide bandwidth there. And that was just to add a little bit more color in that range, just what I thought sounded good. So here it is without the effects and with the effects enabled. And it just makes it sound like a bigger piece of metal. So the body, I'm going to go through that last because it's the most complicated to go through and the most difficult to shape to make sound fairly convincing. And the reason why is because that's kind of really the whole meat of the weapon sound. That's what gives it most of its character and recognizability. But I'll go through that last because that requires kind of the most trial and error to get right, and lining up of these different samples. So first I'm going to go through the reverb here. I've got that rubbing paper sample layered 3 times here, and each one is time stretched a little bit longer from the last and has got slightly slower fade-ins each time. So you'll notice this one's time stretched to about 0.65, this one's time stretched to about 0.55, and this one's time stretched to about 0.4. Now, The reason why is because this is trying to create a sound of the gunshot, the body sound reverberating into the distance. And this last one is almost kind of like a slap back. You'll notice when I play this back that it goes from a kind of mid dark sound to a less noticeable sound, less present sound, and then a kind of slap back, a brighter sound at the end. And to me, that helps me imagine the sound kind of reflecting back a little bit instead of just going infinitely off into the distance. That just seems to create a better, more realistic reverb effect to me. So if we take a look at this first layer here and the effects on it, I pitched it down 2 octaves, added just a slight little bit of pitch variation between the 2 channels to separate left and right here. I've got 2 shifters, and they've just got a 0.5 spread in either direction so that it's not fully off to the left or right channel. And you can see here I added a little bit of formant shift to each of them just to bring a little bit of brightness back. I've got an EQ here that pushes up the low mids and the high mids, and a low shelf here, or a high shelf rather, to take out some of these harsher frequencies. And then a high pass filter just because I don't need that muddy stuff down there. I have a basic 5-tap ping pong delay with a pretty low wet dry mix at -45. So this is just a preset in the Reaper Redelay plugin. And all that I've done is just decrease the wet dry mix. And that's just to give it a little bit more tail than it would have without that delay present. So here it is with the effects chain bypassed. And with the effects enabled. You can see that already is sounding a little bit like reverb from the weapon fire. Now this next layer has a pitch shifter down again with 2 shifters, 2 octaves down. The color that I liked on this particular layer was to push the formant all the way up 2 octaves. And I've got it spread to 100% left and right channel, so it's got a really wide sound. And just a slight detuning on one channel so that you can really separate the 2 channels and get a really wide sound. EQ is the exact same as the last layer. I've got this basic 5-tap ping pong again, but even lower wet dry mix. And instead here added a little bit of reverb. Again, pretty low wet dry mix at -40, but the room size is large. So, for example, if I set this back to even, you can hear there's that really giant room sound like a hall. But I just wanted a tiny bit of that to give it a bit of a tail. And then at the end here, I just EQ'd out some of the mid-high frequencies that I found to be kind of unpleasant. So here's the layer with the FX bypassed and with them enabled. So for the last layer here, a little different. I started with the same EQ first, then again had a double pitch shifter here, this time only down 1 octave and separating the 2 channels by a total of 6 semitones here. And just a little bit more to one side, just slightly changing the pitch a little bit to separate the channels even more. And a little bit of a formant shift here. Followed by not a ping pong delay this time, but rather 2 sets of stereo delay with no feedback really. It's just, this was just to taste, and this is just to create a sense that it's getting wider over time. So first there's one at 0.4 and 0.4 spread, and then there's one at 100% in both direction. And and the second set is a little bit later. And the way that I've separated between the left and right channels on those is to just make the timing slightly different. So these are off by 50 milliseconds, and these ones are off by 30. But that's just to taste or what sounds good. It doesn't need to be those exact numbers. And then at the end, I finished it off by making it so just the high mids were going to be coming through. So here's what it is bypassed and FX enabled. So all together, and that's going to be the reverb layer. So for the body now, I've got the paper flick sound here, a portion of the paper rubbing here, and this one's actually time stretched in the other direction to make it faster, so it's at about 1.5 speed. And this one I also time stretched a little bit. Actually, yeah, all of these are faster. So, and you'll notice this gap here. This is also the paper rubbing sample. And I'll go into why there's a gap here in a little bit, but for now, the main thing is just notice that this takes the place there, fills up that space, and so does the punch. But here's the paper flick. That's with the FX enabled, so I have this pitched down an octave with 15 semitone formant shift up. EQ, just wanted to get the mids here, but found this particular range to be kind of unpleasant. Added wave shaping distortion. You could probably use any distortion plugin, but this is just one of the ones that comes with Reaper. I have it at 85% here. And some compression hitting at about 10 dB gain reduction. Slower attack on this one than the last one, but still pretty high ratio at 8:1. So that's it bypassed. And then with the effects enabled, so it has kind of a metallic snap sort of sound that's going to be part of the recognizable attack on the body there. Now this next layer here, this rub, let me bypass this. So here's what it sounds like with the FX bypassed. Not very much, I know, but it actually adds a lot of character to the final body sound. So here I've just got it shifted down a little bit and adding some color back in with the formant shift here. So -4 semitones. Big push on the high end here to make it more snappy sounding. Wave shaping distortion at 85% again. An additional EQ just to taste. Pushing some of the high mids and taking out some of the mids. And a really fast instant attack compressor. This is just to really glue the sound down and smash it. And EQ at the end to just high pass anything below about going down from 1K. So again, bypassed and enabled. So that gives it a really snappy mid-high frequency sound. And then this is going to be the bulk of the body layer. So I've got, this is one sample that I've split and put into two parts here. This is going to be the initial attack, and then this is going to be the body of the body right here. So this is with the FX bypassed. And you hear how it's got that sound? That's why I have that split in there, and it helps sell that round exiting the chamber sort of effect. And that space will be filled in by this higher frequency and this punch here. So I've got a fuzz distortion here. It may not really be that necessary. because I've just got it at about 25% wet. So it's not adding a whole lot, it's just coloring it up a little bit. Got a 100% sausage fattener here. This is going to be the bulk of what gives it the really distorted character. Then a high mid EQ boost. And this is all going before the pitch shifters that I've got here. So I've got 3 pitch shifters on this plugin. They are all down 2 octaves, but what separates them is these, the panning. So you see I've got stereo panning on these, and these are both shifted up 24 semitones. Again, one is slightly detuned to separate them. And then I've got one in the center that is only 12 semitones formant shifted. And I thought that that just helped thicken up the sound. At first I just had these 2 and it seemed kind of weak, so I added one down the center that just helped fill out the sound and make it thicker and gave a little bit more mid-range presence. And then I've got this kind of ridiculous looking EQ here. I know it looks pretty weird, but this is what I thought sounded good. So big boost here in the mid-range. I found this, there was a particular resonant frequency here that I didn't like, so I EQ'd that out with a dip there. But the main idea is to have a lot of boost in these mids and highs. So again, bypassed, and then with the effects enabled. So you can see how it's really distorted and really mid-rangey now. And I've got these busts now. So let me unsolo this. I've got a bus that is smashing the heck out of this to glue it all together. So that's hitting at about -8 gain reduction. You can shape the attack here. That will just kind of help how the transient sounds on the overall bus. And then I've just got a 4:1 ratio. That's just really gluing the sound together. Sausage fattener again to add a little bit more distortion and smash the sound even more. And then smashing the sound again with a maximizer limiter here. Same one, loud max. So that's how everything sounds together. So everything playing at once, and you get your rifle sound. Now keep in mind that a lot of this was, you know, me sitting down and tweaking over and over again and just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, and finally arriving at what I thought sounded pretty good. You definitely would not have to do it this exact way that I've done it. The amount of time between these 2 regions you could definitely mess around with, and the timing for the punch here, the timing for the mechanical sounds. All of these could be manipulated. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more like this, please let me know in the comments on YouTube, or head on over to my website at owencoopersound.com and drop me a line.